everyone. My name is Wayne, and I'm from New York, and I now live in Florida. And there are several things that we do differently. I just want to go over a few of them with you today. Now, I'm a licensed broker in the state of Florida, but I've owned homes in New York and here in Florida. And there's some major differences. So I figured, let me just compile a list and talk to you about it, let you know what your expectations are coming from northern states, Massachusetts, New York, Jersey, Connecticut. When you come down here, there's certain things that you're not used to and how things are done. So let me just jump right into it and give you this content, and hopefully it helps your transition down here and understanding of why things are the way they are. So the first thing I'm going to talk about is attorneys. In New York, we will typically have an attorney, a realtor, and the process as far as everything is guided by that. And the reason you have the attorneys, they will draft the contracts, they will set times on inspection periods and closing, and it kind of coincides and lines up with their schedule too, because they have to do this whole process. When you move down to a state like Florida, we typically, if anything, rarely will use attorneys, and that is probably the most unsettling adjustment, I think, for Northerners. So one of the things I'd like to talk about is, as a realtor, we get educated on this, and the state of Florida has put together a series of offer documents, contracts, and legal documents for us to utilize to help those transactions. Now, we use a title company, and our title companies are usually great partners of ours, because when we want updates, when we want timing, when we need to know if a property has a lien, and I can get into the weeds on any of these if you have questions. How does a lien get on the house? What do you do to clear a clouded title? How long does that take? Stuff like that. There's a whole bunch of different things. I just want to kind of cover a few general ones, and then have you guys understand the transition and what that looks like. So the first thing I'm talking about is the attorneys versus title company. So attorneys are probably the first person that you're going to meet when you're house shopping. Over here in Florida, you're going to deal with your realtor, and your realtor is going to have access to all those contracts, and they're going to do everything. They're going to advise you on your inspection period, what's good, and it's what's good for you, what's good for the seller, and what's good for your timing. Because let's say you decide, hey, I'm moving down here, I want to really close in about a month and a half. My property is going to be, end of lease or whatever the situation is, and this is the hard timeline. Well, we can calculate back how much time we need for inspection, how much time we need for if you need a mortgage that's going to get approved, how much time we need with that. So we coordinate, talking with your lender and talking with also your title company. And title company can be chosen by the buyer or it can be chosen by the seller, which means whoever is picking is going to pay. Title companies can really screw things up. Attorneys can really screw things up, but we'll get there when we get there. Now, as far as the realtor, they are going to prepare these documents. There's roughly around 20 documents that you're going to go through and read. Your agent is supposed to be able to explain every single part of that. You should have a thorough understanding. And I'm going to do another video about certain things that your agents should tell you about and should talk to you and advise you. There's a lot of things that they might forget and not include just because they don't think it's important. But if you know, then you can ask them about it. Anyway, Let's go on to the attorney versus the realtor. We don't mind if there's a attorney there. We just need to understand how we're working together and what they're doing and what we're doing, because essentially that attorney's there to draft the contract and the language. If the contract is already drafted, then there's not much for the attorney to do except, in my opinion, prevent any possible harm for the buyer. So you're there to protect your client. And with that being said, the legal language, if you start changing things, if you being the agent start changing things, you're bordering on practicing law, and that can lead the buyer into trouble, or the seller, either way, because the same situation goes for buyers or sellers. If you're purchasing a home, or if you're buying a home, if you're purchasing or if you're selling a home, then what's going to happen is that agent has to be versed on the whole process and will guide you through it. So you don't have to have an attorney. You can still have one. The contracts I don't recommend changing, but your attorney might see fit based on your situation. That being said, the next thing I would talk about is, when with my clients, if you are purchasing a home that someone's lived in 20 years and you look at the property taxes for that home, this is very, very deceiving, because that's not the property taxes that you are going to be paying. Not now, anyway. So, here in Florida, if this is your primary home and you claim homestead and you've lived in a home for a while, your property taxes decrease. When you're purchasing the home, your home is going to get readjusted for that property tax. And that may be a big shock. It may be 5 or 6 times as much as you're seeing the current homeowner pay. If you aren't made aware of that, then that can be a big shock, because you're looking at calculating your monthly budget. And let's say, for example, a $300,000 house, and the property taxes are $2,000 a year, and your HOA is about $100 a month, your insurance is about $100 a month, and now you are budgeting $2,400 a month for your monthly expenses, HOA, insurance, everything. Well, your property taxes are included in that. When you purchase the home and you're now adjusting, the property taxes have been adjusted not in the current year, but the year after, and it's 5 times as much, your $2,000 a year property taxes just went to $10,000. So as opposed to paying $200 a month, you're looking at paying close to $1,000. That's a big jump, and if you're not financially prepared for that increase, then you could end up losing your home, having to sell, and in a bad financial situation. So we try to avoid that. And how we avoid that is by getting you all the information. One of the things that is included in there is insurance. Insurance is a major factor here, because up north, you get insurance and that's it. It's done. Hey, I have a house. This is the value of the house. Insure me. Here we have flood insurance. We have homeowners insurance. We have wind mitigation reports that have to be done based on the age of the home. The roof plays a big factor. There are a lot of things that come into play: how the house was built, the year the house was built, the codes that qualify it for discounts. So insurance can be very costly for a northerner transitioning to a southern state. So what we like to do is let you know the reasons you need a home inspection, a 4-point, and a wind mitigation before you actually get into that contract and commit to those numbers. And in talking about committing to those numbers, another item that I mentioned earlier is the HOA. So a lot of people from up north are used to city and local taxes, and that's basically it. Here, you also have your utilities and those those things to factor into your overall cost. But we have HOAs. Certain communities have HOAs. Sometimes they're $100 a month. They could be $800 a month, depending on the amenities that are included in that property. So let's say, for example, you've got a pool, tennis courts, golf course. They can be $12,000, a year for your HOA, and that is a significant amount that you'll have to budget for, and it's something you may not quite honestly use or need. One of my most common complaints that I get from people is, how can you have such a beautiful home here and then a totally rundown home here and it be accepted? Well, it may look run down, and sometimes it is, but that is generally because your home is not in an HOA. And the only rules that are guiding that is, the city codes. And you may have a home with 5 or 6 different vehicles that are being worked on in their front yard. So that's a thing. I'm not sure if I can say much more on that. The neighborhood that you choose is the neighborhood that you choose, and you're gonna see similar homes following that pattern. That's where the HOA comes into place and is supposed to keep the community looking uniform. That's supposed to help the resale of your home and the value of your property. So with that, I mean, is it worth it for you to get and live in an HOA community, or maybe you just want a wider space, because the HOAs are going to be homes right next to homes. They usually don't have so much of a gap. Some do, on the higher end. It's all budget driven, quite honestly, and you have to get used to it. I know a lot of people talk about, oh, it's so much cheaper to live in Florida than it is to live in the northern states. Yeah, there are definitely price differences, but there's also economic differences. What are the cost of living down here versus up there? And also employment. What do you make down here versus what you make up there? So we need to factor all of these in. That being said, the last thing I want to talk about is up north. When you're looking at a home, most homes have basements. So I remember my home, I had to sign a radon disclosure, and in our basement we had testers that we had to put there. I remember certain homes that we were looking at, they had dehumidifiers in the basement because there's always moisture, leading to things like mold, and there are problems. Down here, you typically are building a home on slab, and I'm a big proponent of concrete build. So I'm not an advocate for stick build. I don't mind so much a block, meaning brick, lower level, and a stick upper level, because termites are my big concern here in Florida. Not so much the moisture that I'm going to get from a basement, which is rare down here. So those are some of the things that we have that are very different. I think typically up north, you're going to see a different style of home also. The homes are constructed to help with snow, for example, the weight of snow on a roof. Whereas here, one of the common things everyone says is, how come this home doesn't have gutters? And most of the homes don't have gutters. They do, different planning for that. So around the home, you'll find landscaping that usually is going to absorb that water and drainage that's designed to flow and have the water flow off away from the house. That's typically what you see up north. You always have gutters because you want to channel where the water's going and things like that. So that being said, look, if this video helped you in any way, shape, or form, and you have more questions, feel free to ask. I hope to make this channel about how to help you relocate to a different state, and in this case, it's Florida. And my name is Wayne. I'm a real estate broker here, and feel free to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell so when I do other videos, you can be notified. Thanks a lot.